We are so honored to have you join us for this episode of Beyond the Loss. I'm Aditi Leverage, and I am a bereaved parent to two and parent to one living child. I'm a specialized pregnancy and infant loss coach, mindfulness meditation teacher, and founder of the registered charity, the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Support Center.
And I'm Danyelle bereaved parent to my daughter Emelina and parent to two living daughters. Co-founder and director of operations of the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Support Center. On this show, we share real stories about parenting and healing through pregnancy and infant loss. We allow space for the often silenced truths around loss to be heard. We offer an affirmative space for all people impacted by loss to share their stories, their triumphs, and their healing.
Please keep in mind that the stories shared are personal stories and are not to be used in replacement of professional advice. Should you need additional support, please visit our website in the show notes that are linked.
We are so excited to have you join us for today's episode. Let's start talking.
So welcome back to Beyond the Loss. So today, Danyelle and I don't have a guest, and so it's going to just be Danyelle and I chatting. We were going over some topics and some themes that we wanted to dig a little deeper in and share our experiences about. And today's topic that we thought would be an interesting one would be signs. So signs from our babies, but also signs from, I don't know, whatever you call it, the divine energy, the universe, whatever word you like to use for that, but signs that kind of bring a hope and continue to move us forward in this grief journey that we all find ourselves on. If anybody who knows me knows that I love these types of things. I find great comfort and hope and healing in things that our logical brain, so to speak, can't explain, because I think there's so much of that in this journey. And that's why at the center we offer, tarot card reading and things like that, because sometimes we are looking for hope and we're not going to find them in the intellectual space. So today we're going to chat a little bit about that. So Danyelle, you and I have actually never really, we've chatted a little bit about this because there's been a recent sign that continues to pop up, which I'm hopeful that you're going to share that experience with our listeners. But you and I actually haven't had much conversation about some signs that have popped up for us along this 9-10 year journey that we are on. So is there anything that comes to mind that really stands out for you?
Yeah, so it's interesting when you said at the beginning how our logical brain doesn't always see these signs. When Emelina passed in 2012, the nurses put a butterfly sticker on my door, and that acknowledges for that floor of the hospital that we were delivering an angel baby, a stillbirth, whatever you want to call it. And from that point on, we really took my family, so this is my mom, my daughters, we have always looked at butterflies as kind of a sign from Emelina, sign from her of goodness. And the first year that we had experienced a loss, the butterflies would land on me. And anybody that knows butterflies knows that you have to be like incredibly still and patient. And even then the butterflies may not land on you or come near you. And we were camping and they just kept landing on my toes, or they would land something just in strange places. And so we started to really look at that as a sign. The other sign, because butterflies are very seasonal, the other sign that we look at is the snow. And the snow started because when Emelina was born, she was born in BC in the Fraser Valley, which is in a rainforest. So they don't get a lot of snow. And yet through her delivery, there was snow on the ground. And when we went to do a balloon release on her at her memorial, there was snow everywhere. And there was no snow in the forecast. It just started to snow. So for us, we've always taken the weather, so the snow, the big snowstorms and the butterflies as like the quote signs. And that's how we lived for, I don't know, like 7 years. It's been the last 3 years that I've really noticed more significant signs that I believe are coming either from my daughter or from family that's passed to say, everything's going to be okay, or just to know that I'm on the right track. And those signs look like I find dimes in my pockets all the time, and I never use cash. I pretty much live on debit. If I have cash in my wallet, it's shocking. But I always find dimes in my wallet or in my car or strange places where you'd be like, that doesn't make sense. And then most recently, as Aditi alluded to, we have noticed like a feather that shows up on my computer screen when we're in center meetings. So it's like what I thought was a light and possibly a reflection off my glasses. Really, it can't be. Like there's no logic. Like as much as I would like, go ahead.
It's definitely not a light because for those listening, so we've been working from home due to COVID, and so we do all of our meetings, Danielle and I, over Zoom. And just in the last, like, how long has it been, Danielle?
Oh, like 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, so just in the last like month or so, every time Danielle and I or not every time, but frequently when Danielle and I are having meetings, there's this feather, and it's definitely a feather because like the last time I saw it, it was like definitely a feather. It's a feather that kind of just moves across Danielle's screen, and I see it very, very clearly. And sometimes it's on the right hand, sometimes it's on the left, but it floats and it moves, and it's definitely not a light because yeah, it's just not a light. And the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, maybe it's an orb. And then I mentioned it to you, and you were like, I've been noticing it, but wasn't sure if other people were noticing it. And then my family wanted to see, and so they came and one time, and that was like when it was clearly to me a feather.
Yeah, and a few years ago, if you would have said that, I would have been like, you're crazy. There is a logical explanation for this. And the one thing I found is that there's no logical explanation for it. I truly believe it is a sign, especially because it tends to come up when we are having very sometimes challenging conversations, whether it's about funding because we run the nonprofit or personal items that we're chatting about. It tends to just come. And I always lean into that as a sign that I'm on the right path. I've also, for myself, for me, like numbers are very important. So if I see a lot of repetitive numbers will come up. And the more that I've leaned into this signs from the universe and this spirituality, I find that my whole being is a lot more relaxed and a lot more comforted by what has happened in the past and what's going forward in the future. For somebody that used to be a very particular planner to planning my vacations 2-3 years out, I'm much more comfortable with just following signs from the universe.
Yeah, totally. I think that these signs or these little things that we can't explain intellectually often go dismissed because we can't explain it. And we as humans, we like explanations and we like the facts and we like research and all of that. However, working in this space for over 5 years now, I've just heard and I've seen way too many things for me to be like, okay, this is not coincidental. This isn't people just attaching meaning to these, again, in quotes, seemingly coincidental small things. Like there's some incredible stories that my clients and our community has shared with us, like just everything from, foxes appearing, from hearts just appearing, from certain color. Like it is, and this isn't just our community that experiences this. This is a community of bereaved people as a whole. There's so much anecdotal stories like this, right? Like I asked for this and this is what's happened, right? And for me it's like I really lean into that space because honestly, I think that in a world where there is so much suffering and grief and pain and loss, like it's really lovely sometimes to have these little messages of hope appear. So I like to like try not to overthink it and just kind of let that sign appear and kind of lean into that space because I think it's important for us.
Oh, I think it totally is. When we talk about signs and the universe, we can talk about how we met because there is no logical reason for Aditi and I to have met. For those of you that don't know the story, I met Aditi at a community photo shoot that she was holding for the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Center 2 years ago today. And it's weird because I remember going onto Instagram. I was home by myself that weekend and I was just in a place where I knew that I had to start living my life's dream. And what I mean by that is I needed to start giving back to the communities that needed the help. So I started researching different organizations that were within the Calgary community that were giving back to either children's charity or pregnancy and infant loss. I first came across another nonprofit here in Calgary and said, oh, great, I'll go volunteer there. This looks like a pretty good charity. It's a child's charity. And the same day I came across Aditi's charity and I was like, no, it's the same weekend as the other one. I'm just going to do the other one. And then a week later it was like, no, you need to do this photo shoot. You need to contact this organization and connect with them. And I remember sending that email going, oh, 2 events in one weekend. Like that's going to be a lot for me. Like, what if I get a migraine? What if I'm not feeling well? And I remember just getting this nudge that said, just send the email. You need to send the email. And when I went to try to find the Instagram page of the center, I couldn't find it. And so I just kept searching and searching. And all of a sudden, I swear an ad popped up. Now, whether an ad was scheduled or not, to this day, we really don't know. But I remember seeing an ad and hitting on it and being like, oh, this is the one. And like scrolling down because there had been some other posts since to where she had announced the photo shoot. And I remember because I had said, yeah, I'd love to bring my kids. And Aditi had said, you know what, like we're really full for that slot. Could you come like to the adults only? You know, you can bring your partner, you can come by yourself. And I remember looking at Marius going like, we can't get a babysitter 2 nights in a row. You know, I'll just go by myself. And if for anybody that knows me personally knows that I have some social anxiety. I hate going into new situations. My husband will walk into a new situation and talk anybody's ear off. I, on the other hand, have a lot of anxiety before I go into these situations and really almost just didn't show up. But something kept nudging me along saying, you need to go, you know, there's something here. And I'm so glad I did because it really changed the outcome of my life and it really changed my view on the universe and signs and how if we open our hearts up to what we really want, it'll come. Maybe not when we want it to, but it will come.
Yeah, and so when Danielle came, I didn't know her. We'd never met. So we had a lot of people, like Danielle mentioned, in our first group, which was the people who brought their families, and in our second group, for people who didn't bring their families, it was a smaller group, which actually gave me and Danielle an opportunity to talk. Had she come in the first group, I probably would never have actually spoken to her. So we actually got an opportunity to talk and we were just chatting. And from my perspective of like signs, I was feeling so overwhelmed that day. I had a team of people. This was very early on in the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Support Center's journey. We were like 3 months in, 4 months in, basically. And so the team of people that I had, unfortunately, were not reliable. They didn't show up that day. So it was literally me, my mom, and now one of our board members with me who helped organize the entire event. And I was not feeling well. My chronic pain was flared. I was tired. I was overwhelmed. And honestly, before leaving for that event, I was questioning if I had bitten off more than I could chew. And I was questioning if this was really what I wanted to do. And that was the mental space that I was in. And then Danielle came along and we started to chat and she was expressing like just we were just chatting. It wasn't even like she was like selling herself to me. We were just talking about loss and the community and what we both kind of like wanted to see and how meaningful the community photo shoot was. And I just felt like my cup was being full through this conversation and through the event. It was just incredible. And then we started talking about the nonprofit life, and I just said to her, would you be interested in joining our board? And she was like, yes. And I was like, oh my goodness, yes, okay, let's do that. And it's interesting to hear Danyelle saying like there was just this feeling and this like some like a nudge, because for me too, after talking to Danyelle, I went home and right away there was an email from Danyelle saying, so this is my information, like let's chat. And again, there was a nudge for me just being like, I need to follow through with this. And we met shortly after that, and Danyelle stepped in so beautifully, and then that's really the point where the center really started to take a different turn for the better. And yeah, it's just I can't explain it. So a lot when we're talking about signs, right? A lot of people might be like, well, great. I mean, two people met, but like we shouldn't have really met. Like we probably would never have met, but the stars like really just aligned for us. And I really firmly believe, and again, this might be me just clinging on to something that's not there, or it could be something that is, and I choose to believe that it is. But I really believe like that the universe and our babies in particular put us in that space at that time so that both Danyelle and I could show up and do this work together, because the way that we complement each other, not only in this community workspace of the center, but even in our lives, like I think we've really helped each other evolve. Like I'm gonna get emotional because I've only known Danyelle for 2 years, and I've never had a friend that makes me a better version of myself. So yeah, I'm getting emotional. And the fact that we wanted to talk about signs today, I said, let's chat about signs. And then this morning, the Facebook memory popped up that it was the community photo shoot on this day, May 26, 2 years ago. I am sorry, but I believe that that is a sign as well.
I am in total agreement. I always, when I explain Aditi in my relationship, I usually explain it like this, Aditi. I was at a very low point in my life 3 years ago, and it was the fall of 2018 when you were just opening the center. I was at a really low point, and I was having to make some really hard decisions to try to get myself to become not the old Danyelle, but a version that was different than where I was. And when I started making those decisions in the fall of 2019, I didn't know what that was. But what I did know is that back in 2012, 2013, 2015, I had this vision for a nonprofit that would support families who'd experienced the loss of a child through pregnancy or any other loss that they had, because I was so lost even 7 years later and so deep in my grief that I couldn't get help, because it was like either immediate help or it was like, go see counseling, and the counselors weren't working. So I had been struggling and really trying to find a place. When Aditi's photo shoot popped up, it was like, I just felt seen. And then meeting Aditi and really understanding her view of this, and not just like okay, well, I want to offer like support, like one-on-one support. Her view went way beyond that. It went to like this mind map that I had already driven out, where it was like peer support and, other areas, because the one path that I kept being told to go down wasn't working for me. I didn't need talk therapy. What I needed was a community that understood what loss was. I needed to be validated that 7 years, 8 years, 9 years later, that it was okay to still be grieving my child, because I still miss that child. And although I was, quote, a rainbow parent, I was still struggling. I knew that baby wasn't going to fill my heart. However, I knew that it would give us a new life to, parent. I still was missing that old one. And I felt like nobody fully understood where I was or where I was going until I'd seen Aditi and heard her story and heard her beliefs. And I was like, wow, I feel seen. If I feel seen, so many other people are going to feel seen. And I know, when we talk about the universe, I mean, I fully believe that we are where we are because the universe has consistently had our backs, because we do what's in our heart and we do what our goal was. The universe, although it took 7 years to meet Aditi, the universe was already preparing me for this journey. I had the opportunity while I was pregnant with Emelina to work with the United Way for 20 weeks, doing fundraising and working with them to on their it's like a workplace placement. My company paid for me to go work with a nonprofit for 20 weeks that has gained me so much knowledge and has allowed our organization to take some of those skills putting in place. The universe knew 9 years, almost 10 years before Aditi and I are here, what I needed, and it has consistently played into that. And if you would have told me that 5 years ago, I would have been like, you're crazy. However, what I do know is that the more we lean into those signs and that energy, the more it comes and the more the path is clear. Because when I was asked to go work for the United Way, I was like, why are they picking me? Like, I love this idea, but why did I get picked? There was like 20 other managers that could have been picked for this role. And yet it was me that was picked to go work with this organization through my pregnancy. And they were so supportive after Emelina passed that it was just a community that I'd never even known I needed to be part of. So, signs come in all different ways and different methods. And sometimes the universe is setting us up for something years, years before we even need to use them.
Yeah, that's such an interesting story because I didn't really know that. I didn't know that. I mean, you told me about the United Way, but I didn't know like how that had happened. And I agree, and I fully believe that the universe or whatever it is that you call it had a play in our meeting and in the work that we're doing today. Because I've worked many jobs. I've been an entrepreneur. I've done many things prior to this, and we work really hard. You and I work very hard. However, there is like there's a different feel to it. Things, it does feel supportive. Like things work out. I don't want to say work out, but previously before it felt like I was pushing against the grain, whereas now it like really feels like I'm going with it. And I think that that's again another sign that the universe or something bigger than us is at work here. I fully believe that. And signs is such an interesting thing because they can pop up. Obviously, they pop up in at different points in the journey and in different ways. I remember I was on a podcast once. I want to say his name is Joshua Black, and I'm sorry, Joshua, if I got your last name wrong. But he runs a podcast called Grief Dreams, and he had me on the podcast, and he does a lot of research around like people having dreams about their deceased loved ones and how grief dreams can actually really help people to find healing. And it stemmed from his own journey of he lost his father and he was really, really devastated, obviously, by this impactful loss. And then he had a dream where his father came in, and after that point, he was able to actually, there was hope again. There was healing that was able to come in. And so signs come in all forms, right? They can come in dreams, they can come in so many different forms. They can be in, the universe bringing two people whose souls needed to meet together. I remember one sign for me, actually, I had two pretty significant moments for me that stand out, but both were when I was pregnant with my now living child. As most of you know my story, that pregnancy was very, as a lot of pregnancies after loss, it was a very anxious, disconnected pregnancy. And I remember one day I was home from work because I was off work for most of the time actually that I was pregnant. It was a really difficult pregnancy, and I was home alone, well, with my dog. And I just remember feeling so anxious. Like I was just like, I literally cannot fathom doing this for another, I think at that point there was like, at least 10 to 12 weeks left of the pregnancy. And I was like, I cannot fathom doing this for another 10 to 12 weeks. I don't know. I just want my baby in my arms. I don't know how I'm going to make it through, and crying. And I remember just crying so hard. And then I like looked up, and on my wall, there was this really bright, like heart-shaped, like sunbeam. And I looked around because I was like, maybe it's reflecting off of something, but there was nothing there that could have made that shape or in the place on my wall that it was. Like there was no, again, logical reason for it. And of course, I tried to find the logical reason for it, but I couldn't find it. And I just remember just seeing that light heart beam was so significant for me, especially because when I had my losses, there was always a quote, and a quote that I still have up in my child's room as a memory box that we have in it. And it says, there is a light that shines special for you and me. And that I just remember I cried then out of like gratitude. And there was a sense of just like lightness and hope that came over me. And I needed that because I remember feeling just such despair and brokenness in that moment of how I was going to make it through the next weeks. And so, yeah, could it have been explained intellectually? Who knows? Maybe it could have. But in that moment, it was exactly the sign that I needed to continue through that really hard space.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think when we're open to the signs, it's amazing how they can really give us that energy to keep going.
Yeah.
It makes it less, I don't know, like it makes it less, I don't want to say it makes it less hard, but it kind of does. It takes that little bit of the edge off, I find. The grief is still hard. The journey we're on with the nonprofit is still hard. However, the signs just give me that little bit to say, keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going. It's hard, but keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what that moment did. And then I had another one again in my pregnancy with my living child where, so I was pregnant. I was again home alone because I was home from work, and I had actually a friend had come over. And so the friend came in, and when they came in, I noticed there was a magpie kind of like sitting on our walkway into our house. And so I noticed it and whatever. Then my friend was there, and we spent a couple of hours together, and then they left. And when they were leaving, the magpie was still there. And so she commented and said, "Whoa, this magpie is this the same one?" I was like, "I think it is." And so she left, and then I was looking at the magpie, and it was there. And so I went closer, and I was like, so I started to think that this magpie was maybe injured. So I actually called whatever number I called, and they were like, "Okay, yeah, it sounds like it is injured because it's been there for so long." And I got really close to it, and it didn't fly away. So they said, "If you can, pick it up and place it in a box and call us back, and then we will come and get the magpie." So it had been there for hours. And then I was really scared because I'm not like a wild bird catching person. So I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I want to do this. And so, but I mustered up the courage. I did it. I got closer. The magpie still wasn't leaving. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I got really, really close. And the magpie like looked me right in the face, and then it flew away. So it was there for hours. And I was like, so it wasn't injured, and yet it chose to be on my doorstep that day for hours. And so I looked up the signification of magpies, and this is what it says. It says, magpie, with their dualism of color and representation, they represent duality and binary opposites. The specific focus on this duality tends to be on a reconciliation of emotional or spiritual opposites. It is time to balance opposing emotions such as fear and trust, or anger and compassion. And again, I took that as a big sign because I was having a really hard day leaning into this faith that this pregnancy was going to lead to a living child. And I took that like little magpie's visit as a sign that I could start to maybe lean in or reconcile the fear and trust. And again, it could be explained, and it could be, written away. But again, it gave me, like Danielle, you said, like that little bit of push to to lean into that space a little bit more, which is what I needed because I really was struggling in that pregnancy a lot.
Yeah, I always find the signs tend to come for me when I'm struggling the most. And it's interesting that you mentioned the magpie because my daughter, one of my youngest living child, attends a program in a park, and the birds that seem to hang around her are the magpies, especially when I'm there. And they seem to show up a lot in our backyard. And I've never thought about why it's always the magpie. I'm just like, oh, there's magpies that show up in our yard because we're really close to a pond. However, when you read that, I felt like that was a sign that the magpies are coming for many other reasons. And, when we I'm like, oh, that totally makes sense. And when you read the story about the magpie and kind of their symbol, I'm like, oh, that totally makes sense why the magpies would be hanging around me, because I've had to kind of reconcile some anger and some joy and some other stuff that's been going on. And I was like, wow. So signs show up even in a conversation when we're talking about science, it shows up.
Yeah, which is just so cool. And like I would be so, because I've heard over the years from hundreds of clients and community members in the space, like signs that have shown up for them. I'd be so interested to hear about some signs that have shown up for this community because, like I said, these are like the ones that come to mind for us off the top of our heads. But like I know that there's so many more signs that have shown up along this journey that are probably ones that I'm not even recalling right now, but I'd love to hear from our listeners, like what are some signs that have shown up for you, either like from your angel babies or from the universe that just gives you that little nudge that to help move you more towards hope and move you into a space of finding that space within you to continue to move forward. Because I agree, Danielle. Like I think those signs always come in those really hard moments, and maybe it's because in those really hard moments we're not as maybe connected in our intellectual minds, and so maybe the signs are always there, but we're cracked open enough to see them or hear them.
Oh, I totally believe that. Like, I think that sometimes when we're at our lowest or when we're challenged the most emotionally is when I believe I'm open to receiving those signs. And I'm also on that that precipice of, which way am I going to go? Am I going to lean into the hard so it gets easier, or am I going to run away from the hard?
Yeah, totally. And again, it's interesting because when my mom lost her mom, butterflies was a sign for her because her mom, like my mom was very, very blessed to have been with her mother when she passed. And my mom over those days said, like, I will want to know that you're with me. Like, can you send me a sign? And what will that sign be? And so before my grandmother passed, she actually said to my mom, like, whenever you see a butterfly, it'll be me. And so my mom has seen butterflies obviously seasonally like you, Danielle, but then she's seen butterflies in other ways, right? Like the moment, like my mom was with me when I gave birth to my living child. And the doula, who's Jordan, who now works at the center with us, I had not met Jordan. Jordan was the backup doula for the person that I had actually hired. So I had not met Jordan until that moment that I was in labor. And so Jordan showed up at the house and she was wearing this really big, beautiful, like butterfly necklace. And I know like really gave my mom like the strength to show up for me in that space because she knew that her mom was also with her. So it's just interesting to see. And when my mom told me this like earlier, like the sign is butterflies or whatever, like I was kind of like, yeah, but butterflies are always around, right? Like you know what I mean? Like this is kind of what I thought. And then there's just this thing that continues to happen where I'm just like, interesting. Okay, well maybe there's actually something to it. Because even on my wedding day, now that I'm thinking of it, on my wedding day, right when my partner and I were like exchanging the vows, and it wasn't actually the exchanging vows. We incorporated one Hindu. We had like we were married by justice of peace, and it was a very like non-denominational wedding, but we did incorporate one Hindu ceremony because the significance of it really resonated with me. And when we were doing it, it's like you walk around flame, like you walk around fire 7 times. When we were doing that, there was a butterfly that followed me and would not leave until we had finished that ritual. And my mom was like, "Did you see that? Like that was your nanima, which is what I call grandmother, showing up on your wedding day." And coincidence maybe, but did it give me goosebumps? Absolutely.
Yeah, like the amount of times we see butterflies when we're out hiking, and not like where I would expect to see butterflies. I find the butterfly is very common. So I'm always afraid to say, like, oh, well, we resonate with butterflies. However, they show up in the oddest places at the oddest times that we, we, we put our faith in it, because those are usually the times we're out hiking and there's four of us. And I think, wow, we're really, there's four of us, but we're really missing one. And then all of a sudden there'll be a butterfly that'll, show up in a strange place. And I'm like, we're not really missing one. We may be missing it in the flesh, but she's always with us. So
Yeah, I just love that. And it's just interesting because there's certain things like when those signs show up that I think can make even like the biggest skeptic start to question, right? Like I just said, I was a little skeptical when my mom said that. And then there's just been too many things along this way that have shown up in the form of a butterfly that I'm like, okay, I just can't feel like it's a coincidence. Like I just don't believe that that's true, right? So I would love to hear from our listeners. Like, send us an email. Maybe we will do a follow up recording if you have a really cool, interesting story of some signs that you received along your journey. We'd love to have you on. So, like, send us an email and let's talk about it, because I do believe that signs and this spiritual kind of nudge are important when we're talking about grief and healing and moving forward. I think that they are important, and I think that we should give ourselves permission to lean in a little bit into that space, because I know I have found deep comfort when I've leaned into that space, and I think it's important for this journey.
I echo exactly what you said. The comfort that I found in the signs has given me the ability to move forward the way I've been able to move forward. Without leaning into that, I don't know if I'd be where I am now.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And I wanted to just share this one quote as kind of like a closing, because it's one that I refer back to quite a bit, because we do live in a world where we're always kind of intellectualizing everything. This quote for me has been a really big reminder that there are some things that can be explained intellectually, but there's a lot of things that can't be, and that they shouldn't be dismissed just because they can't be. So this is a quote by Eckhart Tolle. He wrote an article, and I just refer to this quote quite a bit, but it says here, there is an intelligence in the movement of life which goes far beyond the limited intelligence of your thinking mind. This is the spirit. When you begin to trust in your spirit and life itself, you begin to feel a peace. You are no longer separate from that greater intelligence from which life unfolds. You are no longer trying to get somewhere else or find something missing. And he goes on to say, peace comes from this trust. Peace comes from being aligned with the present moment. Wherever you are, you feel that you are home because you are home. And I feel like that sums up how I perceive signs. There is a movement, there is an intelligence in the movement of life that goes far beyond the limited intelligence of our thinking mind. And when we connect to that space, we feel that peace. We feel like we're at home because we are home. we're connected to all the things that we have loved, past, present, and future. And I think that that's why I really believe that signs give us so much hope in this grieving journey. So ponder on that and take away what you will. I think that that's just a beautiful quote to end today's episode with.
I agree.
So thank you for listening. And again, if you have signs that you'd like to share on our podcast, please email us and we would love to have you on. Also, if you are looking to hear some signs, we do have a tarot card reader who is amazing, who works with us. We're going to also have her hopefully on our podcast in future episodes to chat more about this, because I do believe that this is a topic that we can continuously return to. So we look forward to furthering the conversation, and we look forward to having you back on Beyond the Loss.